Good evening and welcome to the Ben and Matt Saturday Night Live show. Unfortunately, we can't come to you live this Saturday because we've had to pre-record. As me and Matt are actually for once busy. How are you anyway, Matt?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks, mate. How are you?
Nah, not bad, mate. Not bad. You been up to much this week?
Not really, no. Just the usual work, football in evenings, and then just chilling out and catching up with TV.
That's not too bad, mate. That's not too bad. Right, I'll dive straight into it, pal. The main topic of the show this week is going to be 5 things that if we was allowed to sit in this board meeting with Joel Glazer, this fans forum, what would be the 5 things you'd ask Joel Glazer in terms of the women's team? I don't know if you've already thought about any questions, pal, or have you got any on the top of your head there?
Yeah, I've kind of broken it down. I think the very, very first thing would be sort of open communication and dialogue going forward. And I think that for me is the first thing you've got to start at. I think if there's some guarantee, whether it's representation, I know in the past you've said, haven't you, about season tickets and things, having sort of a vote. I think there's got to be some sort of representation, whether it's speaking to fans, whether it's, voting. So the communication would be the first bit for me. Like I say, I think speak to fans, make sure that what fans say and vote for is heard, and it's not just doing it to appease fans. I think that, it's got to mean something, otherwise it becomes pointless. So I think number one for me is, like I say, is communication. So however they want to do that, I know for the men's team, they're doing the fans forum, aren't they? But I think in terms of the women's team, for me, I think it'd be better something completely separate. So, like I say, sit down with representatives from the women team and just get views of where the club needs to go, what fans want to and then the club can sort of give their view from their side. So I think number one for me is open and honest communication and making sure fans have a right to express their views. Whether they like it or not, it's kind of tough, if they don't like what's being said. That's football, football's opinions. So I think for me, that's the first bit. So by that, are we sort of financing the club properly? And by that, I mean, basically, will money be made available for a manager? So, the manager that comes in who needs to finance for everything, whether that's facilities, whether that's for employing staff, whether that's for, travel and hotels, etc. The whole lot in terms of finance needs assessing. Now, without finance and money going in, you've got a shell of a club for me. We all know, and this is like a big area, so I'm going to summarize. But basically, we need to start putting money in order to be competitive, not only on the field, but off it. So off the field, like I said, the structure, training facilities, rehab, nutrition, things like that, physio as well. The whole picture off the pitch, first of all, needs to be right. Even player houses, players shouldn't have to be scraping around and struggling to afford accommodation and rent just because, the club can't be bothered putting hands in the pocket. So I think for me, the second thing, like I say, is the finance. When the new manager comes in, I've talked about this a lot. We don't want a revolving door. We don't want the manager to come in, be promised the earth, and then 2 years down the line quit for the same reasons that Casey quit. I think it's massively important that now this problem is solved. And that links back to my first point on communication. So, number 2, finance. Let's get the manager, whoever it is, backed. Let's get the signings in. Obviously, we know Casey's wrapped up 2 to 3 signings. She's said that already. And she's also sorted, I think it was 8 to 10 outgoings. So that bit's huge for me. I think the first 2, like I say, communication and finance. After that, then, number 3 for me is long-term plan. What plans are in place? It's all well and good saying, in 10 years, we want to have won this, this, and this, and in 5 years, want this. That's great. That's ambition. The plan is how you're going to do it. So how are we going to execute that plan? So we might say, right, in 2 years, we want Champions League. How are we going to do it? Well, the manager's going to be back substantially in both seasons, we're going to do this by extra sponsorship, whatever, I don't know, some other way, some advertising revenue or something like that. Do you know what I mean? To build that rapport with local businesses, local football teams, and really get the name and the brand out there. So I think that bit, like I say, the planning, the how we're going to win trophies, how we're going to increase attendances, how we're going to keep people coming back, is I think the third bit for me, and again, that's something that, the big sit down is required. I think the fourth thing for me is the future. So obviously we've got an excellent RTC and academy structure. The next thing for me is how can we make that better? Because it's okay, but it could be better. You look at other RTC and academies. I look at Aston Villa, for example. Aston Villa Women's is probably one of the, or close to one of the best in England. And that might surprise a few people because people thinking, God, Aston Villa Women, the first team are struggling, but the reserves are flying. Chelsea's aren't doing too bad as well. And obviously ourselves are up there. But I think for me, again, clear pathway, facility structure. For me, there needs to be a gap. And I know this isn't something Man United can sort because it's down to the FA, but there needs to be a gap in between the the academy, the under 21s or 3s, whatever they're called, and the first team. Because there's no bridge for me, because your academy, or your devs, as Nat likes to call them, you start there earlier than the men's game. So you start there, and you could be playing at 16 in the devs. And the link between the devs and the first team, the gap is absolutely massive. So for me, it needs something to bridge. And like I say, that's probably not a Man United problem. However, that's a problem Man United can go to the FA. Or, failing that, Man United can create links with other clubs. They did it with Sheffield United in season 1. They've done it with Blackburn this year, and get those partnerships to loan out players. Now, obviously, this year was difficult with COVID and everything going on. But for me, that needs to happen next year. We need to start upping the resources, upping the coaching, the facilities again. And it's all linked into finance for me. And then I think for me, the fifth and final point will probably be things like I say, like promotion of the team, accessibility, things that are going to boost the women's game, so that's attendances, that's travel to and from home and away games, ticket pricing, what can we do pre-match and post-match? I know I've said this many a times, and I've sort of recommended this to Barmy Army, who have passed obviously these comments onto the club about, like little fan zones. We have a little cafe at Lee, and it's not great. Fred the Red rocks up, and that's it. But against Reading in season 1, we had like entertainers, there was magicians, there was football activities, there was loads for the kids to do. Now I get, obviously, people are there for the football, and that's not for everyone. That's fine. However, those that like to make a day of it, why not? It brings people back. It keeps families at that ground. They probably get there at 9 o'clock, and the game will finish at 2, but they won't go home till 4. Because they're spending money on beer and food and merchandise and all the other things that they could do. So, for me, again, that's just sort of, 1, it's raising revenue, and 2, it's keeping customers coming back. And I think, for me, those are sort of, like I say, in summary, the 5 points I'd be raising personally in terms of our women's team. I appreciate it is a lot, and it won't happen overnight, and it probably won't happen in 6 to 12 months. However, long term, like I say, planning, it can, I think, in my view, massively help. And I think, that for me would be a good start. It all comes down, though, to whether the club are willing, 1, to engage, and 2, to actually, take on board these viewpoints. Plenty of fans like me, it's all well and good as piping up and saying stuff on podcasts and saying stuff on Twitter. But at the end of the day, actions speak louder than words for me. So I think some open and honest dialogue. I'd like to see concerns that are raised implemented. I don't see why, if there's a vote, and that say out of 1,000 people that attend, 800 are saying accessibility is an issue getting to Lee, then it's clear that it's not just, 2 or 3 people. And I think for me, they need to then take action on that. So again, it's a process, but with time, as long as the views are heard and then things are implemented by a vote, I don't see why, it can't be done. But I'll let you speak now and kind of talk through your points, pal.
Well, to be fair, Ben, I think you've hit the nail on the head. We really have. For me, accessibility is one of the big problems for me. Where people me and you are all right. We drive, but for people that don't drive, and it is a hell of a long way out from Manchester. Really, to think about it, especially from the Old Trafford area, and the club. I think was it for the Reading game, the very first game, they put on the coaches from Old Trafford to Leigh Sports Village. Maybe they need to start looking at that again, even if it's just the one coach or a minibus or something, you know, depending on what the sort of you know, how many people sort of take up that option, how many people want that. But it has to be like something that's sent out there, whether they do it via survey. Like United like to send surveys out sometimes to see ticket holders or membership holders. And it takes like 5 minutes to do, and it says what transport wise can we offer you something to get from say Old Trafford to Leigh, or from Salford to Leigh. Maybe they could put on a couple of supporters coaches, one going from Old Trafford, maybe one going from maybe more central Manchester into Leigh, and then, you know, and then they can wait around an hour or so after the game. They don't have to be hurried back onto the coach and then shepherd back. So like we say, some people like to wait outside for autographs and to take selfies or whatever with players. So. And as you said, if there's a fan zone there, and you know the fan zone's going on after the game, we could look at hopefully keeping the coaches back for an hour after the game, so they could just sample that sort of atmosphere. But also, I agree with you again. I think there needs to be like a 5 year, at least a very least a 5 year plan from Joel himself. Where does he see this women's team in 5 years' time? What's his plans? What's his aspirations? Does he care about the women's side? And if he does, name me 3 players. Not the Americans, but 3 players, which I bet he can't name me 3 players. But, you know, I'm like, listen, Manchester United, we need to be as one. Be as one. We're all, you know, all equal, all red is what you keep saying. Let's be all equal. Let's be all red. You know, let's get this team some decent training facilities, some permanent decent training facilities, not shafted around from one end to the other end and whatever. I suppose that comes with, as you said, with infrastructure. That'd be your third point, is infrastructure. You know, can we keep Leigh Sports Village long term? Because we don't. Let's be fair, we don't own it. That's up to the Leigh Rugby Centurions, whatever they call themselves. I'm not 100% sure what they're called, but excuse me, that's up to them. So, is there a plan in place where if we can't share their facilities in the long-term future, have we got somewhere else we could go? Somewhere where, you know, they have equal standards. Altrincham FC's quality, but halfway through the season, when the pitch is absolutely bogging because it is a football league ground or non-league ground, whatever. I don't remember what division they're in now, but you know, the pitch is not going to be all that great, and obviously your devs play there as well, so you've got to think about the amount of football that's been played on there. But you know, have we got a long-term plan for a home? Are we secure with Leigh? You know, for all we know, Leigh might be secure. You know, we might have a 10-year deal for the next 10 years, but can we get clarity on that? But also, I'd like to make sure there's a decently set budget every season, if we can, for whoever the manager may be. You know, and that'll increase if we get Champions League football, and then increase again if we start winning titles and cups. You know, I think that's the only way we're going to start challenging you, like your Chelsea's, your Arsenal's. And I don't know if it's true, but I was watching John Foster's show last night. I think it was Natalie that mentioned that even Everton have a bigger budget than us. And you know, something's going wrong when Everton have a bigger budget than we have for our women's side. I already knew that Arsenal, Chelsea and Man City are in bigger budgets, but I didn't realise Everton were getting more to spend on players budget-wise. So can we get at least a decent budget every season, no matter where we finish, so we can challenge. And obviously, can that budget be increased then once we get European football, or if we win the league title, or if we win a cup competition? You know, we need to start building the squad up. You know, it's paper thin as it is, and you know, we should have to ship out 8 to bid in 3. You know, or whatever it may be. We should be able to build up a squad of you know, of your starting 11 should be strong, and then your bench should be strong. At the minute, you know, it's looking like we have to ship out quite a few to bring a few in, but hopefully, as you said, that Casey's sort of, you know, brought the first 2 or 3 signings in, and hopefully, whenever this new manager comes in, gets back, maybe brings a couple in, he or she wants in, you know. But I don't know, mate. I just want reassurances more than anything, and also before the, I know it's more for the men's side about the ESL, but before anything bullshit like that happens towards the women's side as well, we need a share. We need not a share, but a shout as well. We need a voice in that. You know, hold on, what you're doing, what with our women's team, take us where? You know, we need to have a voice that where we can communicate back to the owners. I don't mean the monkey. I don't need the organ grinders, the monkeys and the organ grinders. I want to go straight to the owners and say, listen, no, this is not right. You know, we belong in WSL. You know, we belong there. You know, Sky are pumping a lot of money into this. You know, and who's to know? In a decade's time, this could be the biggest league in the world. You know, just in trust Sky and just in trust in the league. You know, you don't want to be leaving for competitions that well, not even a competition, is it? Because no relegation, no promotions. It's the same old teams year in year out. By a couple of might getting it right. That's not competitive football for me. So we need to make sure that we keep on with competitive football. Keep on, you know, backing the next manager that's in, whoever it may be. Make sure we give him a good backing every season. I don't want to see a first season good backing and then like I do with Ollie or like I do with the men's managers, start decreasing the budget, start decreasing the backing. That'd be probably my sort of points. And also just make sure that the fans have a say, like you said, like with fan zones and that, I come back to that point. I think, especially because the audience is a lot younger in the women's game, I've come back to that point that fan zones, I think it's important. You know, you got a lot of young kids that come to this game. It's more family orientated because the tickets are cheaper, and the game as a whole, the women's game as a whole, is cheaper to follow than the men's football. So you're going to get a lot more families. So maybe we can provide more than just a cafe for people to go in before matches. Maybe we should have like a little fan zone, or a little fan park, or whatever. You know, like a little penalty shootout or some competition outside or whatever, and maybe like you said, clowns or something. So, something to just cheer the kids up a little bit to keep them entertained before the game. Because let's be fair, when we go into LSV, we're not allowed until about an hour before kickoff, are we? So it's not like Old Trafford where you go in up to 2 to maybe 3 hours before kickoff. Leeds Sports Village is an hour. So like you said, if a family gets there for about 9-10 o'clock for a midday kickoff, let's give them something to entertain the kids for a couple of hours, But that's basically all I need, mate. Reassurance is more than anything that we're backing this team, we're getting the right infrastructure in, and creating fan zones for the fans. We're laying on transport if needed. If we get enough numbers that are interested in that the club, even if it's one bus from Old Trafford, as I said before, or a bus from maybe central Manchester, that we can get things like that in place and set in stone. But they need to communicate with us, not only just as a men's team, but as a women's team as well, because not everybody from the men's team, as we know, watches the women's team, and not everybody from the women's team watches the men's team. So you need to communicate as a whole to everybody, And I think it'd be good. So I'm not so sure 100% really if there is any women's representatives. That's however you pronounce it. That sit on the fans forum from the women's side, or whether it's all from the men's side. I'm not 100% sure. Someone may be able to correct me, but we need some representation on that board, on that fans forum from the women's side, whether it be somebody from the Barmy Army or something, for example, or whether it be somebody more independent, but that, that has the best intentions for the women's side, for the fans, for the women's team. We need some sort of representation on that fans forum if we haven't already got any. But I'm sure somebody will correct me if we have. You did touch upon a manager there, and I'm not so sure whether you suggested to me last night about the Leon manager. I am not going to pronounce his name. I'll trip myself up straight away. But you know more about him than me. Is he the one that's probably looking more like the favourite? Is he, or would you think? Because we did a poll the other day, and I put a poll up on our Twitter page, All for United WSC Twitter page, and I asked people whether they wanted people from abroad, a manager from abroad, the next somebody from within, or someone with WXL experience. And abroad won by 59% of the 124 votes or something daft like that. But that one, is that somebody that you like to see come in, or have you got somebody else in mind?
So I think it's pronounced Gerard Prichot, but my French is okay. My pronunciations are bad, so
I just call him Gerard then.
Yeah, Gerard. We'll go with Gerard. I think for me, he's the only name that has been mentioned. Is the only name that I've seen linked. And to be fair, I think I'm sort of. I want him, but I don't. If you know what I mean. I'm not say I don't, because somebody will come back from me for that. I want him, but I've got a few concerns. I'll rephrase that. So I want him, but I've concerns. So basically, very good manager, did an excellent job with Leon, great coach. Okay, he's a winner, used to winning. Gets his teams. Leon played some decent football under him. It was very much a focus on sort of getting the ball and attacking from wide areas, which is something we don't tend to do. As such, we don't tend to cross in a ball and it in as such, but it doesn't matter. So he's got a different style to Casey. My concern, or my sort of hesitancy, is at Leon, he was backed by an awful lot of money. It was pretty much a case of, if you want this player, here's the money, go and get them, type thing. Now, which is great, that's fine. However, we know managers just left due to lack of support of finance and training facilities. So if he comes in, he's going to want cast iron guarantees, first of all, of a training facility that's half decent, and he doesn't want to be moving around like this year. I think secondly, obviously the budget, he's going to have to, if he comes in, it's going to be a case of how good are you at, one, developing what you've got, and two, working on a budget and getting, might be those young gems like we found Owner in Spain. It might be getting those type of players and improving them. So that's kind of my little bit of concern, where it's like, not concern over his ability, but concern over the club's ability to back him. Because like I say, he's worked with money. So it could be one of those where he comes in and, like I say, he gets maybe a little bit more than, Casey would have done. Who knows? But I think, like I say, for me, it would be a great appointment if he's willing. He'd need, like I say, those guarantees, so we're not chopping and changing. But he would need to also realise that he's under owners that are basically incompetent. So he's not going to get what he thinks or what he asks for, or certainly not straight away. So for me, it's interesting. I think, that would be an interesting appointment. And it's the only name I've seen. Now, I mentioned, I think it was on our show, actually, last week, was it, about somebody like a Kelly Chambers, and that was sort of
that's right, yeah,
sticking with somebody that, one, knows the league, and two, has coached in the league. WSL and things like that. That for me is probably more of a second choice. I think the reason for Gerard is he's been at the top level, he's won trophies, he's managed in Europe, he knows what it takes, and he can probably handle pressure and expectation. Flip that round to Kelly, who is a young up-and-coming coach like Casey was. She's at Reading. There's probably not too much expected at Reading. I mean, without being funny, they kind of, they sit there, don't they? They sort of flirt with the top four for a bit and then come anywhere sort of 5th, 6th, 7th. And I think it could be one of them. could she, with more money, because let's not forget our budget is bad, but it's not as bad as Reading's. So could she, with a little bit more money, maybe, improve us? I'm looking at how well she's done at coaching players and bringing young through players at Reading, and even the older players. You look at, or you hear comments from Farrah Williams about how much she's improved, and she went to Reading, after her 30s. So that for me could be interesting if we're talking about, taking another WSL manager. I know Natalie mentioned Hope Powell. Again, being there with England on the biggest stage. Not much money at Brighton. So again, could be maybe something we look for. But I think for me, and I tweeted not long after Casey went, it needs to be somebody that's been there. Now, I did say Jill Ellis. Didn't realise she had a job as a director of football, but somebody of that sort of calibre, that's been at like a big. I mean, I can only compare to sort of men's names, but do you know what I mean? It's difficult. Like, you need sort of, obviously when Fergie retired, we went for a David Moyes, and I mean, come on, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then we tried making it a bit bigger, and we went for Louis van Gaal, and then after that, it went to sort of Mourinho, and it was kind of like, at the time maybe we rushed and went for Moyes, when for me we could have maybe gone for a bigger name. I mean, listen, that's by the by, but do you know what I mean? So trying to compare, it's difficult because I hate comparing men's and women's, but I think we need to go for a big name that's been there and done it now, because we're coming into season 4, rather than maybe take a gamble on somebody like a Kelly that's sort of up and coming. Now, Hope Powell, some people say, is she good enough? Is she this? Is she that? I mean, listen, she built that England team up. Okay, it didn't win anything, but she took that team from sort of, not very much to, a decent team that was making quarterfinals. And people may say, well, quarterfinals not great, but to be fair, back then when she was in charge of England, the league wasn't full time, the players weren't full time, and they were combining it with jobs. So in terms of training and facilities, you look at when she was in charge all those years ago to now, there's a hell of a difference. So, I think three interesting names for me. Gerrard would be my front runner, but I think I wouldn't be hugely disappointed if it was Kelly or Hope Powell. Do I think we'll go for them? Probably not. I think we'd probably rather look abroad, but the options are there, but there's not many names thrown out, so it's difficult other than Gerrard to sort of talk about me. But like I say, it's either going to be something like a sort of a Hope Powell and a Kelly Chambers, or maybe just all guns blazing, go for Gerrard, back him and say, right, this is what we got, this is what we can look forward to. So it does become very interesting for me.
I know Nat favours someone from abroad, but someone Rodney sort of mentioned, I think we mentioned him in our last week's show as well, is Willie Kirk. As someone that's been there before, sort of started that journey out with Casey. And I think, I can't remember if it was me or yourself that suggested there's maybe too many burnt bridges there for him coming back. But Rodney was like, well, he's a decent coach, everything, Do we think that maybe has a slight outside chance, or do you think that's it? Bridge completely burnt.
The thing is with that, like I said on our show last week, I think not only burnt bridges, but he burnt bridges with players. Okay, we don't know that he didn't burn bridges with sort of the people that are calling the shots. So the likes of John Murtagh, and was he called Ben Davila or something, the finance guy? I don't know. I can't remember it. And obviously we've got a GM as well now, general manager. So it's not just the players that he could have, fallen out with. It could be, higher up as well. And obviously the backroom staff, you don't know, if he fell out with any of them. But I think the thing is that whilst I agree, yes, he is a great coach, again, he's still not been, what's the word, like at that high level. It's still not being at the very, very top. So for me, I'd argue that, like I mentioned before, Kelly and Hope are great coaches, probably just as good as Willie, if not better for me, or at least on par. So whilst Willie had, and I saw his Bristol team a lot, did a fantastic job with Bristol, lots of good young players, most of now who are in top 3, top 4 sides, fair play, But again, reference back to your point you mentioned earlier when Natalie was saying Everton have got, a bigger budget than us, and still, what did they finish, 15, 18 points behind us?
Yeah.
So, it just shows that all the money in the world doesn't necessarily give you a better advantage. You need to go out there and buy the right types. Now, it's not to say you won't, but looking at his Everton team this year, okay, Izzy Christiansen was a decent player. Sandy McKeever, not a bad player. But in terms of what he's brought in, he brought in that Govan for nearly 100 million, behave, £100,000, which is huge in the women's game. And I think her goal return hasn't been very good at all. I mean, it's been okay, but it's not been what you'd expect from a £100,000 signing. You know, you'd expect in sort of 10, 15, 16, 18 goals, and it's not been that. You know, she's not been anywhere near sort of, you know, the top goal scorers in the league. So it's an interesting shout. I think that, like I said to you last week, that bridge for me is sailed. I think now, you know, you don't, for me, go backwards in the sense that you don't go back on what you've got rid of. So, you know, we let him go and we said, you know, fair play. Thank you for what you did. You want to be a first team manager or coach, not a problem. But, you know, for me, it is equally as good. Like I say, if people, not you, if people want to put Will in the frame, you may as well put Kelly Chambers in the frame. You may as well put Hope Powell in the frame for me, because they're equally as good, you know. And that's people that can do just as good a job as Willie would do in terms of developing players, coaching players, improving the team. But like I say, you know, Willie's not been there winning things. He's not been top of a league. He's not been in cup finals. So for me, it's like, you know, you can't really put that name out there, so to speak, if you're wanting to take the club to the next level. So for me, like I say, you know, it's all well and good throwing out names, but there's a lack of options. And I even think abroad, you know, who may have left clubs abroad that have been in, you know, maybe Champions League finals or cup finals in their league or won things. And I think there's not many. There really, off the top of my head, I genuinely can't think. And that's why after Casey was announced for leaving, I quickly chucked out Jill Ellis without thinking, because it was a name that stuck out. But I'm struggling, apart from this Gerrard bloke, for somebody that actually sticks out. Really am. So, yeah, I think that's where I stand on it anyway. But I think it needs, I've said this a lot, it needs doing soon, because we've not heard anything on it, which I don't know if it's good or it's bad. It could be good in the sense that it's been sorted and the new Casey leave a couple of months ago and they're just waiting for maybe the outgoing players to be announced, and then they'll be like, right, here's your manager, here's your incomings. Or it might be that they've not got a Scooby-Doo and we're panicking and with no training facility and shit's going to make the fan come pre-season, which is, you know, going to creep up on us soon.
That being said, is there anybody from inside the club that you may particularly see could take the job? Do forgive me, I can't remember the assistant manager's name now off the top of my head. But apparently this guy's got a bit of a good reputation as well. And obviously our devs coach that Natalie always talks highly about. Natalie said she may be able to jump up one. Do you think an eternal appointment would sort of, even if it's for a season, sort of maybe steady us a little bit? Or do you think we need to go out there and get our first choice manager, whether it be from abroad or WSL experience? Because I worry if we go internal and we promote within and it doesn't work for a season, or whatever, and we could halfway through the season we're like, oh, we're looking for a new manager again. I worry about how stable the club will be then, you know, results wise, and players, not attitudes, but players sort of demeanour, you know. Can you see anybody from the inside the club just to quickly point on that, since we're covered all three areas?
I think for me, no. And pretty much similar to you, I think the trouble is that the assistant, by the way, is Martin Ho. Now,
that's it, Martin Ho, yeah.
You know, I massively rate him, and I watched him or his Everton. Well, it wasn't his Everton side, but he was assistant and first team coach at Everton prior to sort of us. The way it came was he was there with Andy Spence. Then he came to our development team, and then he got promoted to the first team. And don't get me wrong, he's a very, very, very good coach. And I was made up when he came in, because I thought, you know, after Glenn left, we needed somebody that, for me, was better than Glenn. And he's come in and he's been a lot better, you know, brilliant coach. But he's never managed. And, you know, it's one of them, again, Charlotte Healy, she's managed the devs. It's a completely different world stepping up, whether you're coaching or whether you're playing, from the devs to the first team. So, for me, I wouldn't appoint within just due to lack of experience and the fact that one of them is a manager and has never kind of been up at that high level.
Yeah.
And the other one's always been a coach. It'd kind of be like when we had Sir Alex and Mike Phelan and Rene. It'd be kind of like promoting Mike Phelan to be a number one. And you saw what happened when he went and did that at, was it Hull?
Yeah, Hull. Yeah, he went to Hull. Yeah,
It was a struggle. Now, first team coaching or assistant manager is completely different to manager. I think there's different things involved, and I know this because I'm involved in this, and I've been involved in this for years, and I've sort of worked at elite clubs and that high level. But I myself, I'm not a manager. I've been sort of a first team coach and an assistant, and I think the manager obviously is more of a people person, doesn't tend to coach, sort of does the other. I mean, listen, some managers do coach, but I think if you're first team coach, you're better off staying as a first team coach and an assistant and advising and putting the things together. Because I'd hate for him, like you say, if Martin got the job to come in, not have a great start. Fans will get a bit restless and on the back because they'll be comparing to Casey. And then, like you say, in 12 months' time, looking for somebody else. I think why lose a good coach just by rushing into a decision? So I think for me, we've got to go out there and get the best of the best, because we've not got 12 months where we can afford to be, chucking somebody in the deep end unproven when there's pressure to sustain and not go backwards. It's massively important that we at least next year, as a minimum, come fourth. And I hate saying that because I'm more ambitious than that, but I just think the state of the club at the minute, and obviously, like I said, there's quite a lot of outgoings. We need to get that stability like you talked about. So fourth for me is the very, very minimum. I want Champions League, but I also want a trophy. So I think for me, we should be looking to compete for trophies next year. And I don't think that throwing somebody there unproven is a good shout. Listen, in season 1, we got away with it because it was the championship, and there was promotion was expected, but there was very little sort of huge pressure because it was like, we expect promotion, but I think if we hadn't have got it, it wouldn't have been the end of the world from sort of the club's point of view. They'd have been like, right, well, let's go at it next year. So yeah, we've got to go out there for me. Listen, I'd keep Martin on board. I really would for next season. And, if we keep an existing staff, great, that's fine. But the manager has to be proven and top whack. Somebody that's either done WSL or if they're coming from abroad, has been there in the big games, the big moments, the finals, won titles and things like that. So it does become interesting for me.
Just no Vicky Jepson, eh? Don't want
no. I'd rather take the job myself, lad.
Yeah, I think I saw on Twitter the other day, actually, somebody maybe said, is it Farrah Williams? Have I pronounced the first name right? Farrah. Somebody said, what about her? And I said, listen, that's even worse than, for me, recruiting within, internally. It's like legendary player, but not every legendary player becomes a great coach or a great manager, Yep. And I said, listen, we can't afford to be going backwards. I said, had we been a championship side still, and I could maybe understand someone like that as an appointment. But listen, we're top 4 WSL side, trying to break the Champions League, trying to win trophies. I want to see us go out and, get the best that we can get. Get the best manager that we can recruit, the best of the best. Well, Manchester United shouldn't have to be going after I'm not saying Williams will be a mediocre manager, by the way. We shouldn't have to go after mediocrity. We should be going after the very, very best in line. Whoever that may be, I know there's people in jobs, even if you can sort of price somebody out of a job from abroad and say, listen, do you fancy a challenge? Or whether it'll be Mr. Gerrard from, don't pronounce his second name, from Lyon, who's been there, done it all. But as you said, maybe has to learn himself to maybe work in to a budget. Whereas he didn't have that early on, it was a bit like Pep Guardiola at City, in it, where you don't really have a budget, do you? You just spend what you like. So maybe he might see that as a challenge, mate. I've got to work within my means, I've got to work within a budget. I've got some cracking players there. I could bring a couple of cracking players in myself, Who knows, mate? The more high caliber manager that you get, also the more high caliber players that you can attract as well, because it's not only the club, it's also, especially from foreign managers, foreign players, beg your pardon. If they see there's a manager they've worked with before that's been really successful at Lyon, they might just take a sort of a gamble and come to United and say, listen, But again, that comes back to will we get back? Will that manager get back to that little bit more, but we shall see. And on players, pal, I know it's something we've touched upon plenty of times. I know on other shows, what position is key this season to really strengthen? if we had one key area to strengthen, what would you
One.
say is the area we need to strengthen the most?
You know what, that's difficult because I want to. It's a toss up between two. I think the trouble is because I know the names who are going. I'm gonna say. I think I'm gonna say up front. I wanted to say defense, but I'll tell you why I say up front. Right. So there's been rumours, so we'll not give away names. There's been rumours of Jess going. There's been rumours of LJ pretty much done to Chelsea. We're losing Tobin and Christum. There's been rumours of Jane Ross going, which leaves us with Alessia Russo.
Yeah.
Now, love her to bits. I think she'll be our top scorer next year. Quality player. We just need to keep her fit. But ultimately, it comes down to goals win your games. Now, our defence this year, for me, has been shambolic. That said, Mary Earps has still kept the third highest number of clean sheets in the league. You know, there was Anne-Katrina Berger first, Ellie Roebuck, and then Mary third. And Mary kept, I think it was 2 less than Ellie. I think Mary got 10 and Ellie got 12, and Ellie's England's number 1. And everybody looks to her as like, oh, you know, the benchmark for English goalkeepers. So, whilst the defence was shambolic, we've still got, you know, enough players there. I think forwards with the outs, if all those rumours are correct and we lose all those players, it's pretty much, I think it's one forward, isn't it? So it's like, you know, obviously Leah, Galton and Hansen are attacking players, but they're not out and out forwards. So for me, like I say, goals win your games. I'd be going out, and let's assume all those players go, for me, 2 forwards. Yeah. So that we've got enough, we've got the depth. I always say 2 up top. So for me, Alessia and whoever, and 1 on the bench or to come off the bench, or even 2 on the bench, you know. And if Hansen and Galton are either side of Alessia and she's sort of, you know, central and it's in that sort of front three, fine. But yeah, I'm gonna go for forwards would be crucial, because if you look at our goals for, we're in the 40s. The top 3 were all in the 60s. You know, I think Everton are pretty much scoring the same amount of goals as us. And you look at their forward line compared to ours and you think, my God, like ours is, you know, a million times better than theirs, but yet the scoring. And I think clinicalness and conversion.
I'm not sure. I think Matt might have frozen up there, but yeah, I think striker is one of the positions that we need to improve our forward line. A clinical striker to come in, someone that will hit the onion bag without a secondary thought. You know, I think sometimes we're guilty of taking too much thinking time of whether we're going to shoot or not. So I think we definitely need that predator in the box, a proper predator in the box. But Sean, Matt, are you back, pal?
Yeah, sorry, they're frozen.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was saying similar to you about, you know, the need for a forward and, like you said, the clinicalness. And I think that in summer, for me, that's the crucial. I was talking earlier before I froze about sort of Everton and how they were close to pretty much scoring the same as us. So I think that's going to be the difference next year. Those draws that were, you know, where we wasted chances, even the losses, you know, I think back to the Reading home game, the amount of chances we missed, you know, it's the fine margins. We missed out on Champions League by a point. I mean, some people say 2 points, including the goal difference. So let's go with that, 2 points. And, you know, you look back at that, the Reading game and other games that kind of chucked away. So, yeah, for me, it's got to be a forward. Well, 2 forwards in summer as the area of priority for me over defenders.
Is there a particular forward that you've got on your little radar, pal? Is there a particular forward that you're interested in? We all know that Natalie's got sort of a wish list, if you will.
Wish list or an essay?
More of an essay, you're right, yeah. But who she wants to bring in? Is there a striker out there that you'd love to see us get?
I had names and they all seem to be signing new contracts or going elsewhere. I think, you know, I've always been a big fan of Beth England, and there was rumours last season, or should I say the season just finished, that she was unhappy. But I think recently she's come out and said she's willing to give it 1 more year at Chelsea and fight for a place. So that seems to be that. Obviously, I'd seen, you know, this week on Twitter people mentioned Ellen White, but she's just signed a new 2-year deal.
Yeah.
So I think for me, I'd heard back in December that Nikita Paris wanted to leave Lyon because she felt it was affecting her England chances. And when I mentioned that name, as you can imagine, all people's all arms in the air, ex-City and all this. But I think for me, listen, we took on in season one ex-Liverpool players. We signed the ex-City and Abbey. So if they're good enough, I'm not kind of really bothered who they played for. If they're good enough and they're going to improve my team and give us what we need to take us to the next level, I couldn't give a toss where they played. Do you know what I mean? Some people say that's wrong. That's fine. That's their opinion. But for me, she's quick. She's a winner. She's strong. She's, dynamic. And I think she's the third all-time top scorer in the WSL. Now, for me, she would have probably still been top had she not been at Lyon for the past couple of years. She's massively high on assists as well. She's sort of a wide forward player, out on that wide right. So for me, again, I don't know if she's staying. I've read recently that she may be staying, so I don't know. So I think Paris, somebody like an Eva Navarro, obviously she's injured currently, but a young player.
Yeah.
I know Nat's a big fan of Bunny Shaw. I've seen bits of her. She looks okay. My only concern is, can she do it in the WSL? People are quick to hype up this Oshoala at Barcelona, who I saw for 3 years in the WSL, and she was absolutely garbage, couldn't hit a barn door. And she was at an Arsenal team and a Liverpool team. The Liverpool team at the time were top three, and Arsenal, again, there was so many chances they created, and she was woeful. So, she's done okay in Spain. But I think for me, that'd be the worry if we did go for Bunny Shaw. It's great that she's scoring in France and her record is outstanding, but is she going to come and hit the big time in the WSL? It took Jackie 12 months, didn't it, to get up to speed? So it's difficult because the forward line is interesting because it's like I'm leaning towards looking abroad. That said, Paris, obviously English, there's again, it's difficult because the amount of names, like I said, chucked out there, have either disappeared elsewhere or signed new deals. So it's hard. But listen, if this Gerard comes in, he might know some good young players or up-and-coming players in France, for example, which, could be, I think people talk about, I think she was called Malvard. We saw her in the under-19s Euros. Do you remember for France, she was the top scorer at Lyon? She'd be, a decent sign if they were willing to let her go because they've got in a couple of young players. So, yeah, it becomes interesting, but I think those are my thoughts, really. Maybe somebody around the Bunny Shaw type, the Eva Navarro, Nikita Paris, and sort of, at least, with Paris that she's been there and done it, and she does offer, the leadership qualities, the winner. She's fast as well. Imagine a front line, because Leah's fast and Hansen's fast as well, or somebody like that you can bring off the bench. But yeah, it's interesting, really. I don't know if you've any sort of thoughts on forwards.
Well, to be fair, mate, that Nikita Paris one, I've always said that I'd take her. I don't think Natalie's too much of a fan, but I don't think there's other people say, oh, City, that. But as you said, the WSL goal scorer record alone, someone that knows what when you're in the bag is what I was trying to explain while he was frozen up. We need someone that can hit the back of the net without a secondary thought. I think sometimes we're a bit guilty of overthinking our player, overthinking a shot. Whereas we need a striker that'll take a shot straight away. For Nikita Paris, I think if she became available, it would be foolish not to take at least a little look. Whether is there a possibility to come to Manchester United? So that's an international, is England international, full England international. I love that. Bunny Shaw, I thought she was signed for City. I thought I was, well, obviously, I don't know what's going on there, but I thought she wanted Champions League football. But again, I'm with you, though. It's all right scoring in the French league, but can you do that in England?
Yeah.
We all thought that Jane Ross was going to be a decent goal scorer, and that didn't turn out.
Exactly.
Unfortunately, to be the case, but we could even get a hidden gem, like I've said before on other shows. Could be a fact that we find a hidden gem somewhere. If we do bring this guy in from Lyon, like you said, this Gerard, he made a couple of hidden gems in and around the French league or across Europe somewhere. And take a gamble, like for Oda, for example. Oda's been a fucking hidden gem, really. I didn't know much about her, but then again, I don't know much about anything outside United. But she's been a fantastic. She was our she's been our best player of the year. You know, you could really say that she's been a bit of a hidden gem. You know, but you know, I just hope so long as we recruit the right type of striker. I don't want a striker that's coming in that's not a proper out-and-out goal scorer, because we need a proper clinical out-and-out goal scorer.
Yeah.
To me, the chance of catching Chelsea and City, because City have got Ellen White, out-and-out goal scorer. Chelsea have got strikers coming out the backsides. You know, and they're probably going to have Elche to bolster their attacking talent as well. So I'd love a Beth England as well, you know, but will she come from Chelsea? And again, you're suggesting that she might give it one more season to try and push for a place. I'll take a Beth England all day long. But we shall see, mate. We shall see. You got any final thoughts? Any other signings that you sort of would like to see us make at any other positions?
I think, well, obviously I talked about sort of forwards being the main thing, but I think after that, the defence, I think, like I say, again, knowing the outs and not giving away too much, I think we're going to need one full-back at least, and I'd probably say one, possibly two centre-halves. For me, I think I'll go with two centre-backs, a full-back, two forwards. I think a decent sub-goalkeeper. You know, I think Rambo needs another loan. I really do. She needs to be playing regularly so we know a bit more about her. She needs a full season of playing games. You know, she might have to drop to the Championship. That's fine, which means we need a number two. Now, I've talked since December about Sophie Bagley, England under-23 international. Yeah. Time and time again, okay, people might say, well, look, they got relegated. But, I mean, come on, look at the back four they had. You know, seen her for England, she's been class. I've seen her play, like I say, for years. And I think, for me, she's at a good age to push Mary and really make Mary push her own game on. Very, very solid keeper, you know. I mean, would she be happy coming in as number two is the big debate. But listen, what keeper is happy coming in at number two? You know, the way you'd sell it is you come in and say you're going to be fighting for number one spot. And you fight it out. And whoever's the best in training, best attitude, best in games gets it for me. So I think somebody to push Mary. And then a wide player, whether it's the left or the right, or maybe somebody that can play both. Because I think we massively struggled when Leah's been out injured. You know, we've seen Tooney out wide, which has been fine, but just some backup. You know, like I say, whether that's left-hand side, right-hand side, and possibly as well a spare CDM. You know, again, we've missed Hayley Ladd massively. Katie Zellam's not a CDM at all. Lucy Stant isn't a CDM. Jackie's not a CDM. Tooney's not a CDM. So just back up for Hayley. Again, I've talked about Alana Kennedy. United fans may remember her scored that absolute peach of a goal past us for Tottenham. But again, she's different to Hayley in the fact that she's a lot taller and stronger. Now, Hayley's a physical player, but Alana, I think, is like 5'10", compared to Hayley that's like 5'4" or 5'5". So you're getting a sort of a different player. Can play centre-half as well. If needed, she plays centre-half for a country. CDM or centre mid, you know, she's quite versatile like that. So that's somebody I'd bring in that area. But I think, you know, we need to, like I say, I think there's 8 to 10 going out, I believe. So for me, there needs to be at least 8 coming in. Yeah. In that respect, like I say, 2 centre-backs, a full-back, a wide player, 2 forwards, a sub-goalkeeper and a CDM. You know, that's 8. So for me, it's like that could cover it. And then after that, you know, look to maybe loan out a couple of devs and maybe bring in a couple more squad players wherever, just to sort of get the depth and the numbers, really.
Yeah, I agree. Because I'm not 100% sold on Maria Torres-Stottier.
Yeah.
Sorry,
I think that's why for me, two centre halves, knowing that he's out of contract and going.
Yeah, I'm not completely sold on her. She might have a barnstorming season next year. You know, maybe take a little bit of time to settle in, like he did for Jackie. You know, just to settle into the squad. You know, so I'm not going to completely write her off, but I'm not 100% sold on her yet as a centre half. But I agree with you, mate. Looking forward, pal. Looking forward. We are back live next week's show. This week we've just had a family party, shall we say, to go to. It's my brother's birthday, so I'm going down to see my brother. I've not seen him for 5 years. And see my mum and dad, let them see their grandson. I've not seen in about 14 months, thanks to the Rona. And I know you've got your party as well, pal. So we are back live next week. So our first live show on YouTube. So we do apologise to the pre-record, but it's going to happen from time to time. Like once every couple of months, we might have to do pre-record. Just the nature of the Saturday night show. Everything's opening back up again. People are going to want it to go out or what have you. But we'll be back live next week. Matt, any final thoughts, pal, before we wrap up, buddy?
I think we've covered most of them. I think just to maybe add to your points you made at the start of the show, I think you talked about the sort of the fans forum and representatives. Maybe that could be something that the club put to vote. Maybe people can apply. You talked about you don't know if somebody's on it from Barmy. Maybe throw it open and say, look, we'll take applications for 5 representatives or 4, maybe 4 actually, so it's balanced when there's actually no 5. Because then when there's a voting, it's the 3 and the 2. So like 5 representatives apply, do it that way, and then communicate with the fans. I think that would be a good start. And like you say, get some fan representation from the women's side on there. And then obviously, you pretty much covered most of it. But I think the only other thing is, like you said with the coaches, I think they could sort of stagger the leaving times. You talked about some may want to stay behind. I think if you just set them off every half an hour. So let's say game finishes at 2. The first bus is 2:30, 3 o'clock, 3:30, and just a little period for, let's say, getting people out. But apart from that, mate, no, great show. We covered it well. Obviously, I know cautious of time, so I'll let you wrap it up. And obviously, hopefully, like you say, we can get this YouTube up and running. We're still a couple of technical things at the main All United end, but subscribe to YouTube at All United WFC, and the same for following us on Twitter. But I'll let you wrap up, Ben.
Yeah, I'm not sure this is the first show with a John show tonight. Well, yesterday night. Tonight is because we're pre-recording it, but yesterday night is going to be the first show on the YouTube channel because I think John's trying to mess around with something as well. I'm not 100% sure what he's doing, but this should be going on YouTube anyway. But unfortunately, as I said, I do apologise to the pre-record. What I will say, I've got a couple of minutes just to ramble on. Get in the comments. Obviously, I know it's going to be no live comments. We can't interact with you, which has been a bit of a downside to this pre-record. But get in the comments and I shall reply to you. This should be up at 8 o'clock, hopefully, on a Saturday, usual time. Get in the comments and I'll comment back. I'll make sure I reply to every comment that I can. Other than that, we'll see you next week. Matt's socials by now. You know my socials by now. Matt will do, I think on Sunday, won't you, Matt? Another pin sort of schedule. Is it Sunday you're doing that?
Yeah. Yep.
So you know what's going to go on throughout the week. And thank you, Matt. Thank you as always, pal. And we shall see you next week.
Lovely. Pleasure. See you later.